I was running out of time. This whole experience felt so surreal. I was almost sure I was dreaming. But then why couldn't I wake up? Why couldn't I lucid dream and get out? Because unfortunately I wasn't dreaming. I stood in the center of the lab away from any walls or windows because as far as I was sure, I was surrounded. I looked out the window again, and outside was still a crowd of people, like Times Square on New Year's. They were just standing there, blankly, smiling. Days and nights passed while I was in there. They didn't move. I saw people that I recognized. I'm not sure where from, but I definitely knew their faces. They had me boxed in. I realized I was sweating like crazy and my hands were shaking. I had to do something. I had to fix the machine. I decided to open the control panel and take a look at what I had to do. Of course it was backwards. I sighed and laid on the floor. My only choices were to get the parts, or to die here, both of which would most likely result in death. I guess the more noble death would be trying. I got myself a weapon, a blowtorch, from our general supply closet. I took apart my barricade, and readied the blowtorch as I opened the door. To my surprise, my colleagues didn't attack me. They simply backed up and lined the hallway, still staring at me. The parts I needed were in my office. I knew where I had to go. I followed the hallway of people as I made my way to the office. I turned to go inside, but they all blocked me. They all moved at once to barricade the door to my office. I thought about what I could do instead of fighting them. They genuinely terrified me. I decided to go out the back door and attempt to climb through the window of my office. The people following me all the way up until I went outside. It was almost as if these ones couldn't go outside and the others couldn't come in. The people were all crowded around the front, which gave me a slight advantage. Maybe they wouldn't notice me going around back. Except they did. I was just about to open my window when a sudden feeling of paranoia fell over me. I turned around to face the group. My heart felt like it was going to pound straight out of my chest. Their faces all simultaneously twisted into smiles as they advanced towards me all at once. One man had me pinned against the brick wall by my wrists, while the rest of them looked over his shoulder and watched. I was trapped. My eyes darted from face to face as I tried to think of a plan. I could feel beads of sweat dripping down my forehead and a rush of fear as I looked into the eyes of the man pinning me down. In a sudden burst of adrenaline, I kicked the man out of the way. I ignored the pain in my groin from the blow I administered to him as I kicked more of them out of the way, again ignoring the pain. I hastily climbed the wall with any footholds I could find and pulled myself onto the roof of the one-story building. I looked down at them from my position atop the building, heart still pounding. They didn't attempt to follow me. They stood along the wall around the window and around the rest of the building and stared up at me, standing still. I was safe for now, but I had to figure out a way into my office. Fortunately, the ventilation system was large enough to fit into and quite conveniently had a shaft that led directly into my office. As I gently let myself down into my office, I could feel their stares on me again. Their faces were in the window on my door and the window I'd previously attempted to enter through. My heart started back up to probably 200 beats per minute. I was terrified. I quickly rooted through the drawers at my desk and found the part I needed. Now, I just needed to get back to the lab and fix the machine. I slipped the part into my coat pocket and looked around the room. The door was a no-go. As was the window. My only option was the vent. Was there a vent in the lab? There had to be. A thought suddenly came back to me. I remembered I had worked on designing this place. I had the blueprints stashed away on top of my bookshelf. I reached up and grabbed the blueprints, unrolling them onto my desk. They were backwards, but I still understood them. The only vents in the lab were in the floor. However, there was one in the wall right next to the door. I would have to face the people if I was quick enough. I just might make it. I mapped out my route and hoisted myself back up into the vent. I crawled along until I reached the hallway. They gathered at the bottom of the vent, almost as if they were expecting me there. I had no choice. I pushed the vent out and jumped to the floor, sprinting towards the lab as I landed. They followed me. In fact, They almost got me. I shut the lab door behind me, and then the pounding began again. I fashioned together a quick barricade to subdue them, only they didn't stand still after I barricaded like last time. They continued pounding. I had limited time. I didn't know how long the barricade would last, so I got to work on the machine quickly. I placed the part back in place, and I was just about to step inside when I realized I don't know where to go. This is a time machine. I'm in a different dimension. I thought on a whim and picked up the fire extinguisher. Maybe if I mimicked what the volunteer had done, I can cause a shockwave to send me home. I smashed the fire extinguisher straight into the machine and felt a shockwave, and everything went black right as the people broke through the door. I was floating in space once again. Only it was a lot worse than last time. It didn't just feel ominous. It felt like everything was actually out to get me. Things lurked. Things that I couldn't see chased me. The planets and stars were nothing but a distraction. It was like that for the whole time. No abyss and no beauty, only horror. I once again witnessed myself aging. I knew it would be over soon. I suddenly started falling into the mouth of one of the beasts, a planet-sized monster, with what I thought were tentacles and a gaping mouth filled with enormous teeth. I was helpless as it swallowed me. Then I woke up once again in the lab. Only I wasn't laying on the floor, I was in the machine. I started to hyperventilate as I frantically looked around the room. I pounded on the door to make it open, and then I pushed so hard I fell out. I ended up on my hands and knees, shaking and sweating.
George? Dr. Mason? Dr. George Mason?
A woman in a lab coat asked. I glanced up at her, and I glanced at the clock. 5:02.
There was an issue with the machine. You were only supposed to be gone for 1 minute, but it took 2. I don't know what happened, Dr. Mason.
Everything was coming back to me now. My name was George Mason. I had a PhD in physics, and I was the ringleader of this godforsaken project. I built this lab, I built this machine, and I shouldn't have. I pulled myself up off the ground, grabbed the same fire extinguisher, and used it to smash the machine. The woman who I remembered went by the name of Rebecca Reeves gasped, "Doctor, what are you doing?" I finished smashing the machine to the point of no return before throwing the fire extinguisher down. "Fuck this shit. Shut the project down," I ordered, my voice shaking.
What?
Rebecca asked. "Just shut it down, for God's sake." I didn't finish my sentence. I walked out of the room and stormed to my office, still shaking from anxiety. I sat in my chair and broke down, full-on sobbing, and I didn't know why. I was only gone for 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, I underwent the most stress and fear I'd ever felt in my entire life. Those people, they still haunt me. Every time I talk to someone, I make sure they don't look like them. I have to reassure myself that I'm not in the mirror anymore. I have to remind myself that normal people don't read my intentions and know my every move. I have to remind myself that none of my friends are out to get me. Time travel is not meant to be messed with. You best hope you don't end up in the mirror.